Hey there folks, Aldershot here, and today I'm going to talk about a pretty controversial topic, so do bear with me. I'm going to be talking about Gamergate and my perspective on it. Now, I'm a moderate to this controversy, as in, I certainly have my personal biases, I must acknowledge that for sure, but I have not been actively participating within this controversy, so to speak. I've been kind of watching it as it's unfolding over the last few months. I've been reading up on Gamergate as well as Kotaku in Action. Gamergate being the anti-Gamergate subreddit, and Kotaku in Action being the pro-Gamergate subreddit. Obviously, I've also been reading lots and lots of articles on the topic, and I've been reading or watching lots of YouTube videos on the topic as well. So I'm an outsider, so to speak. I'm a person who is simply just observing this controversy from the outside. Now I do want to mention that this video is demonetized. It's just a small sign of integrity. I am not doing this for views or for ad revenue or anything like that. This topic being so controversial, many of my friends refuse to talk about it. And I feel like I don't really have an outlet unless I speak about it here. So that is why I'm talking about it. That's why I'm making this video. Simply so I don't explode from bottling everything in. Alright? So this is going to be kind of like the moderate's perspective on Gamergate, or the Gamergate controversy to be more specific. Alright, so if you're here on this channel, I would expect you to be some sort of gamer. This is a gaming channel after all, and since you are some sort of gamer, I would expect you to have heard a thing or two about Gamergate. Now, depending on where you got your information, your view on Gamergate certainly will differ quite drastically from people who might have got their information from elsewhere, okay? So, what is Gamergate? Well, if you've been reading popular media from the beginning, then you might think that Gamergate is about harassing women. That is an anti-women developer movement of some sort, a misogynistic movement, if you will. And, again, from kind of watching this unfold over the last few months, I can confirm that Gamergate certainly is not a misogynistic movement. It is definitely not a movement formed solely to hate on women developers. Okay? That is simply just not the case. There's a lot of factors pointing to this. One of the bigger ones is that they've actually raised thousands of dollars for a indie charity by the fine young capitalists for women developers, okay? And this was actually done before the Gamergate controversy got really heated. So what that says to me, not only do these people not hate women, but they genuinely show that they are proactively trying to help women in the game industry. And because the whole fine young capitalist thing happened before Gamergate really took off, it shows some integrity, that this charity thing was not just a PR move to make Gamergate look better, that these people genuinely do care about the gaming industry and diversity within the gaming industry as a whole. Alright? Another factor that really helped me form this view that Gamergate is certainly not a misogynistic movement is that there are many women within the Gamergate movement. In fact, some of the loudest voices within Gamergate are women. Okay? So, if Gamergate was a misogynistic movement, if it was about hating on women, then how can these women be a part of the same movement? In fact, how can these women have a voice? Not just a voice, but some of the loudest voice within the movement. That simply cannot be the case. By the very definition of what misogyny is, that is an impossibility. Okay? So, let's quickly dispel that right away. Gamergate is not about misogyny. It is not about hating on women. Alright? Now, Gamergate certainly is very nuanced though. It is not simply just about journalistic ethics. And simply is not simply about, you know, a hate group either, right? It's a very nuanced topic, and honestly, anyone forming an opinion based on one or two articles or one or two tweets, you know, I never like insulting people on this channel. It's not really my personality to do that, but I would have to call you a fool. Because again, the Gamergate controversy is just too nuanced to simply form such a hard opinion, to label one side or the other as monsters simply through a couple of tweets or one article. Alright? And I highly suggest everyone to look into what I'm saying for themselves as well. Alright? So the next thing is, you might ask, is Gamergate a harassment group? Well, no, they are not a harassment group, okay? Well, at least they are not formed solely as, you know, to harass other people. That certainly is not the reason why Gamergate was formed, okay? Now, Gamergate is a very large, leaderless, and anonymous consumer revolt movement, right? And because of its anonymous and leaderless aspect, there are going to be some bad apples that get in. And this can also be said about the anti-Gamergate side as well. I've seen some bad apples from that side. Neither side are formed solely to harass other people. Both sides definitely have their own agendas for sure, but neither are created solely for harassment. But I must confess that I have seen a certain degree of, I guess, what you would call harassment. That term can be considered subjective, so take that with a grain of salt, I guess, but I have seen it from both sides. Okay? No side's really clean on this subject, to be completely honest. And that is certainly not a part that I can condone or appreciate from either side of this controversy. However, because this is the internet, because emotions and opinions tend to kind of flare up, you know, these things tend to happen. Now, I am certainly not downplaying or excusing these terrible actions, but one must acknowledge that these things does happen. It's a bit unfortunate, alright? So, the next thing is Gamergate really about game ethics? Or not game ethics, journalistic ethics. Yes, as a core, they are, but there is a caveat to this. It is not as simple as that. Gamergate, though they do certainly say that it is about game journalistic ethics and integrity and all that, it is a little bit more than that. There is, from what I've seen as an observer, there is actually two fronts to Gamergate right now. Again, game journalistic ethics is, I believe, to be the larger front, the larger portion of what makes up Gamergate. However, there is also a portion that is fighting a culture war. Okay? There has been, over the last year or so, some controversy over extreme feminism making, or let me clarify that, extreme feminism making their way into the game industry, okay, as in their views and their principles. And before I move on, I do want to clarify that there is a huge difference between a feminist and an extreme feminist, or a radical feminist, okay? I myself consider myself a feminist. I highly believe in equality, in, you know, men and women, that they should have the same rights and the same laws protecting them. Anyways, as I was saying, there is a culture war currently where there are a lot of people who's concerned that extreme feminist ideals are starting to censor and harass even some people within the gaming industry. I'll give you a couple of examples. For example, there's been a documented incident where extreme feminists have been harassing the concept artists of Skullgirls, alright, which is, by the way, a fantastic 2D fighting game, an indie fighting game, where it features many female characters in this fighting game. In fact, it's called Skullgirls. It's an all-female crew, alright, and I got no issues with that. Many people don't have an issue with that. However, there has been some suggestions that these characters are quote-unquote over-sexualized. Well, the fact of the matter is, the animator on the game is actually a woman, and she just so happens to really enjoy animating boobs and butts, essentially. It was actually, from my understanding anyways, it was kind of her idea to put those nuances in the animation. So that is one example of the culture war that Gamergate seems to be fighting. Another example, one that is a little bit more recent, would be Divinity The Original Sin. There has been a lot of criticisms of simply just the cover art of Divinity The Original Sin. And on the cover art, it shows a male protagonist, a male warrior protagonist, holding hands side by side with a woman female warrior protagonist. And the female warrior protagonist seems to have her belly exposed, right? And that's just art design, whatever, right? Some people have been sending, you know, harassing and very violent emails to that development crew, or that development team as well, to the point where even professional game journalists have been kind of making suggestions, quote-unquote suggestions, to these development crew or this development team to change the cover arts. Okay, and all this is documented within a journal entry from the artist of Divinity himself, which of course I will link in the description. And basically, they were attacked so bad that they actually did change the cover arts, to their dismay. They didn't want to, they've been vocal that they didn't want to censor it, but to avoid negative PR and to avoid causing a negative relationship with these game journalists, they decided to change the cover arts to cover the female warrior protagonists a little bit, okay? And of course all this will be cited in the description. Now, recently they've updated the cover art on Steam to bring back the original cover art, bring back the original design of both the armor pieces, and I'm happy to see that, because I am going to inject a little bit of my own ideology here. I personally do not believe in censoring artists' work whatsoever. If you don't like it, you simply just don't have to participate in it. You simply don't have to buy the product. You can voice your dislike on your Twitter feed if you like, but simply harassing artists and development team because you don't like it, that I do not condone. That I do not side with. That I cannot approve of, right? So Gamergate is kind of fighting that front as well. They are kind of on a culture war against censorship of their content that they love so much, which is video games, right? Now, the bigger portion of Gamergate certainly is the game journalistic side of it. And most of this really got trumped up when the GameJourno Pros mailing list got leaked, okay? And if you're unfamiliar with GameJourno Pros, that itself is full of nuances as well. I will have a few links on GameJourno Pros listed in the description that I would highly recommend you read yourself. But simply, to put it simply, it's essentially a mailing list of many game journalists, alright? From across the board. And to name off a few, alright? There are journalists from within Kotaku, GameSpot, Polygon, Wired, Eurogamer, and Joystick. And again, this is just naming a few. There is a lot more involved in this mailing list. And within that mailing list, the GameJourno Pros, it seems like at times there are individuals who are abusing their powers, which is unfortunate, of course. There's been cases where some individuals have been trying to censor other individuals within that mailing list from publishing opposing ideas from the popular narrative within that mailing list, right? And there's been times where they've all kind of collaborated to push a certain idea or a certain political points all at once to make it seem like these are just individuals speaking coincidentally all at the same time. However, I do want to point out that these journalists who are indicated might not have necessarily all participated in collusion. However, you know, be skeptical for sure, and that GameJourno Pros does not include every game journalist, okay? Only a select few, although there are many in that few category. And again, you can read more about it in the links below, you know. It's just too much nuances for me to cover in just one video. But this mailing list have been found to be possibly illegal, and also it betrays consumer trust as well. As, you know, the journalists are supposed to be the watchdogs of society. They're supposed to be the ones that are watching for corruption as well as, you know, crime and all that stuff. It's not supposed to be the other way around, which unfortunately seems to be the case. From what I've seen, Gamergate is simply the watchdogs of game journalists right now, which is ridiculous. Not the fact that Gamergate is the watchdogs, it's the fact that Gamergate needs to be the watchdogs of game. And this all really got heated up and kickstarted when they released over 11 articles stating the same thing within the same day, or within a couple of days. That gamers were dead, that gamers don't have to be your viewers, that gamers are misogynistic monsters, which is unfounded, okay? None of these articles have a sliver of truth to them. They have not cited an ounce of fact. There has not been any data showing any of these articles to have any truth to it whatsoever. And what's worse is, these 11 articles cited to each other as though they were fact. And what's even worse than this is that some mainstream media, such as the Huffington Post, have picked up on this and reported that gamers were misogynistic monsters as though it was fact. And they cited at least one of these 11 anti-gamer articles as though it was fact. Now, as far as the mainstream media picking up on the story, I don't think that was a conspiracy on their part. I think it was just lazy journalism. They saw these 11 articles, believed it was fact, and reported based on those 11 articles. However, it has been found out that these GameJourno Pros have been colluding and conspiring to release these articles all at once in order to push a political agenda, which is illegal. Not only is it illegal, but these articles, these 11 articles, not only being full of misinformation, but was insulting. They've insulted their own readership, their own viewership. Why would you do that? Why would you call your readers, your customers, monsters? Why would you call them misogynists? Why would you call them harassers? It's just, if nothing else, it's just a damn bad PR move. It's just incredibly unprofessional. Now, I kind of want to talk about some of the effectiveness of Gamergate as a movement, alright? So through Gamergate, and perhaps through just gamers in general, there has been enough pressure put on these game media sites from GameJourno Pros to release an ethics policy. Okay, so if you look at a lot of these game media sites, they will now, a lot of them for the first time, have an open ethics policy on how they handle journalism, right? Some policies are certainly stronger than others, to say the least, but is at least a step in the right direction. They've also managed to put enough pressure on Gawker Media's advertisers to pull out of advertising on Gawker sites. And if you don't know, Gawker is sort of like the boss of Kotaku, alright? In fact, recently there has been an article from Gawker stating that they've lost over 7 figures in ad revenue. Now, they never specifically say what number that 7-figure is. It could be as little, which is still not little, as $1 million to as much as over $9 million, right? So they've been proven effective in that way as well. And also, recently, the FTC, because they've been paying attention to this controversy as much as we have, they have updated their policy on affiliated links, as has been found out recently that Kotaku have been reporting on articles as though it was objective reporting, but was found out that these articles were in fact paid advertisements. And this was never made known to the public until recently due to FTC's new policy. So that is also, they've also proven themselves effective in that way as well. So as a whole, as far as Gamergate being about journalistic ethics, they have proven themselves to be effective. So that's pretty much Gamergate in a nutshell, or at the very least my perspective of Gamergates. And again, I am a moderate, you know, I come from neutral ground, if you will. I'm an outside observer. However, I would be lying if I didn't acknowledge that I am sympathetic towards Gamergates. The more I read into it, the more I became sympathetic towards Gamergate. And why wouldn't I be? Because I have seen the Gamergate movement being misrepresented over and over again. I have seen Gamergates harassed just as much as the other side claimed that they have been. And the games media site will not report on this side of Gamergate. And why would they? After all, they've been proven to be corrupt. They are the ones that are implicated in this controversy. In fact, I would even go as far as to say they are the ones that are responsible for this controversy. Yet they won't take any responsibility for it. In fact, from what I've seen, they still continue to push their anti-gamer propaganda. They still continue to insult their own readership, which is ridiculous. So, at the end of the day, what do I honestly see in Gamergaters, you know? Well, from the female perspective, I see that a lot of the women in Gamergate simply don't want to have other people speak for them. You know, they don't share the same ideology that the opposing side is pushing, yet they feel like that the opposing side is putting words in their mouth. And they don't want that. They simply just want to game in the culture that they love. And as the male side of it, they simply don't want to be labeled as misogynist. And also, they share similar principles in that they don't want their games censored either. And at the end of the day, both sides, both male and female, just don't want corrupt journalism to cover the culture and the hobby that they love so much, right? But there is a silver lining to all this. There's definitely a silver lining to this, and that is that once again, gamers, despite which end of the controversy that you're coming from, have proven that we are by far the most passionate and most well-informed consumer base out there. I'll give you an example. I'm a graphic designer slash illustrator, and when I was in design school, that was about the time when Adobe switched from a one-time payment model to a monthly subscription model. And a lot of designers and artists didn't like that. I remember a good few of my instructors kind of kicking up a fuss about it, but nothing happened. There was no revolt. There was no, debates. There was no controversy of anything of that sort. It just happened silently. So this controversy, again, despite which end you're coming from, shows that gamers are actually even more passionate and more well-informed than a professional industry that is the art industry. And that's saying something. I think that is something worth celebrating. Because after all, Gamergaters, they simply just want to game and not have their, their games censored and to have clean journalism. Whereas the other end, they seem to also love games and they just simply want to push what they consider a ethical, social movement, if you will, to make a social change in the hobby that they love, right? And I believe there's just a lot of misunderstanding between the two sides. I believe that both sides might be a little bit overly focused on mudslinging against each other. But at the end of the day, guys, we are all gamers, right? So let's game on, hey? Anyways, normally we don't touch on topics that's so heavy or so serious on this channel. As my longtime viewers would know, this channel is mainly focused on bringing hidden gems to the average gamer, or, to talk about games that you might be interested in and finding out if it's good or not, if it's worth your time and money. So, again, I do appreciate you guys listening. I do appreciate you guys giving me this opportunity to say the things I did, because I've been kind of bottling it up for the last month or so, and I felt like I was about to explode. Anyways, folks, I'm gonna get out of here. All the shout outs.